You folks don't know nothing about Bitcoin and energy. What if I told you the two are soulmates? What if I told you could learn about the connection between the two? This is me telling you that you can at the premier Bitcoin mining event in Houston, Texas, put on by Digital Wildcatters. We'll see you there!
Hey everybody, welcome to Chuck Yates Needs a Job, the podcast. My guest today, Daniel Herz.
Hey,
good to have you on, dude.
It's good to see you.
It's been forever. When was the last time we hung out?
Yeah, so it's been like 10 years. I remember sitting in the Kane Anderson offices.
Ugh, I kind of broke out the hives when you said that.
Yeah,
but okay.
We were talking energy. We were talking long-lived production, and things were pretty good. It was 2013. And
oh, yeah, those were good days.
Yeah, it's been like a lifetime.
That has been that long ago. And you notice I didn't say what company you're with, because who are you with these days?
Yeah, I'd like to think I'm with the universe.
Not metaphysically.
Yeah, no, literally, I'm with the universe. No, I started a company a year and a half ago called WhiteHawk Energy. And we'll get into it. I think there's a lot to talk about. But first, I think what's super exciting is we popped the balloon. The spy balloon is down. And, you know, I'm a little disappointed. I had thought that balloon was a UFO. I thought for sure the UFO was out there. We finally had been visited, but it's not.
Okay, so I have a take on this. So I think what we're going to do when we sift through all the rubbish and, you know, all the particles and the bits and all that for the balloon, we're not going to really find anything. We're not going to find any surveillance equipment, no transmission type stuff. I think what they were doing is testing weather patterns, because I think the next pandemic is going to be airborne. So they were releasing the balloon just to see, could they guide it over the United States? And so you've got potentially a pandemic release from there of some sort of virus or something. Or could you possibly float something that becomes one of the blockers of communication? I.e., can we shut down a power plant or something? And so I think they were testing weather patterns, but that's my take.
I mean, I think that's super interesting and super possible. I mean, I think, I don't know if you've ever seen the studies of like interstellar and meteoric landings coming in, and the type of viruses that those could have and the effect on the population. I think it was, what was it, the last pandemic in 1918? It broke out in two different places across two different continents on the same day. And so, and of course, back then you didn't travel by plane, and the idea that it came in two different places, it seems entirely possible that it came from actually outer space through some sort of meteor.
And, I didn't know that. Yeah. The one thing I knew about the 1918 Spanish flu is the history of pandemics are, as you have mutations in the virus, generally speaking, it becomes less virulent, right? Because you've got your guard up. If you have a more dangerous strain, the virus dies with the host gets isolated, it can't spread, right?
Right.
And 1918, the Spanish flu was different because we had trench warfare going on in World War I. So what would they do if you got sick in the trench? They put you on an ambulance, they bust you 200 miles away to a hospital that had 500 people on it. So you pass the virus to more people. And that's why it was so bad, you know. But I mean, as we saw with COVID, every variant was less virulent. And that's the history of pandemics, but I didn't know about the. Where did the two places start?
I can't say. I don't want to
Okay.
give you bad information, but
Okay.
I mean, literally halfway around the world. Others can look it up, and I mean, there's just super interesting things. I think it's entirely likely that whatever the balloon was is different than whatever we think it was.
Yeah.
And the reasons for it and what's going on. But in any case, I think it's a good transition actually into energy and what we're here to talk about, which really,
I'd love to hear you explain that, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's
lay it
about
on
history.
me.
I mean, so I'm with WhiteHawk Energy, but I really wanted to, I thought we could talk about my history and really where I started, not about Daniel Herz per se, but really
Dude, I
going
love
back.
dropping the third person pretty quick. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Can we
it's
do that
great.
the whole time?
Yeah.
I'll be Fatty, you be Daniel.
It's
That'll
great.
be perfect.
Yeah.
So where'd you start?
Yeah. So I started, I grew up in Wisconsin.
Okay.
Now, I think it's extremely important to mention that, and this is a little bit of a secret of mine. It's important to mention that because I live just outside of New York City, and I've worked in New York City for 24 years, but I'm not a New Yorker. I'm a normal person. No offense to New Yorkers, and I'll offend a bunch of people today, I suspect. But I grew up in Wisconsin, went to Indiana University, Hoosiers, go Hoosiers. And then, but I knew I wanted to build businesses. I knew from the time I was 14 on, and I met my now wife of almost 20 years in college and learned about investment banking. She's from New Jersey, the town we live in currently. And I learned from her, and really her sister, who was dating a guy who was at Solomon Smith Barney, investment banking is the best way to learn the most as quickly as possible and be exposed to CEOs.
Train for Wall Street, train for Main Street. Yep.
Yeah. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to go work in investment banking. Now, I didn't appreciate that it's a bit of a tough path, especially from Indiana University, which is great because part of my experience is, the less I know, the better. And so I didn't know that, it's highly unlikely. I just said, I'm going to go do that.
Right.
And so I went and did it. And I got a job actually with a group that had just left Solomon Smith Barney, starting the energy group at Bank of America Securities, led by a guy you may know, Chad Weiss. You remember Chad?
No, I remember
He was at
Chad.
RBC. So Chad ran the group, and then a guy, Vince Cubbage.
Yeah.
Do you know Vince?
Well, I owned because now I'm poor, that I'm unemployed. But I
doubt that. I highly doubt it.
I owned 2 planes with his brother Matt, and it was the tail end of the second plane that we finally put together. That Vince is your brother? Duh, that makes sense.
Oh, that's amazing.
Because I went to Rice undergrad with Eddie Gay.
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess he was Ed Gay when he was on Wall Street, but Ed was part of that group at Smith Barney.
Yeah.
But he didn't go to Bank of America.
So Vince is the greatest. I spoke to Vince a week or two ago. He just sold his most recent company to Shale, which was amazing. I think a battery storage company called like Volta or Voltus. In any case, Vince was my first mentor and hired me. He said his interview question was, how many days in a row have you been able to stay up? And of course, I was in a fraternity at Indiana, so I had actually been forced to stay up for many days in a row and been tortured, which is great. And so Vince is like, okay, that's great. So I started in investment banking in 1999 in the energy group and really helped.
And that was in New York?
In New York
Okay.
at 9 West 57th, the old Montgomery Securities. It's Well, what I love, and I just find so much symmetry in this world, is 9 West, and in particular, the 48th floor was the home of RJR Nabisco and Ross Johnson, who is the CEO. And for those who haven't read Barbarians at the Gate or seen the movie, I haven't seen the movie, but read.
James Garner's so good.
It's amazing. Yeah. Well, the book and the story is amazing. Essentially, it's the leveraged buyout of RJR Nabisco. And Ross Johnson was the CEO, sat on the 48th floor of 9 West, was sweeping the offices for bugs and like secretly walking down 6 flights of stairs to the 42nd floor, which was KKR. It's amazing. And so we got to, I started my career on the 48th floor. That book was like one of my inspirations to want to be in business, want to be in banking. And so worked for Vince, was an analyst for 3 years, had the benefit, there's so much in life that's luck. And one doesn't know that it's luck or not luck, but had the benefit of the telecom tech bubble bursting in 2000, which was a real bummer because I got my first bonus. I invested in great companies, that bonus, and lost it all.
Pets.com.
Yeah, no, it was like WorldCom. How about WorldCom? That was a legitimate company until it went bankrupt, and then it was a zero. So in any case, though, that caused all the analysts and associates to leave the energy group. So I was working 24/7 and ended up being an analyst promote to associate and was covering the MLPs. By the way, I probably stayed because I wasn't capable of leaving to go to tech and telecom. But,
right.
I stayed in energy. Cash flow made sense to me and became an associate and was really covering MLPs. And so this is, and again, I guess I should say, this is, again, not about me per se, but really the evolution of the space for everybody who's kind of watching or listening. And I really should say anything I say right now, as you know, Chuck, isn't just Daniel Herz. I had 2 amazing mentors and partners on this next phase, and that's Ed Cohen and Jonathan Cohen. Ed was Energy CEO of the Year in 2011 by Hart Energy. Ed has a PhD from Princeton in the classics, a JD from Penn. He's a brilliant, brilliant person. And Jonathan is a brilliant, brilliant person as well. They were, my mentors, my partners, and they're like a second family to me. So anything I say is with them and with the thousands of people who've worked with us, from who are dear friends today, from everyone who was out making sure our wells were producing. We're drilling.
Let's give one quick disclaimer. Anything good that happened at Kane was all me. Anything bad were other people. Just for the record.
Well, can I just ask you a question on that?
Yeah, fire away.
Just like when you say anything good, what was the best thing? I've just been super interested to know, what was the best deal you did at Kane?
Silver Hill. Clearly, we so it was a scary deal too. Two things in there were really, really scary. One, so the original thesis is we went into, in effect, right outside of Pecos, Loving, Winkler County, and we got the shallow rights to the canyon sands, and we were gonna do a wolfberry. Old school, drill a vertical, commingle, 5 to 7 zones.
And what year was this?
This is 2012, maybe.
Okay.
So we're going to do this. And Kyle Miller and his team are all like 30. It was the first time I ever had a meeting where I was sitting in and I went, holy shit, I'm the old guy. Yeah. When did I become the old guy? But I was the old guy. So that was it. And we drilled 7 of the finest water wells ever in the history of West Texas. We were spewing water everywhere. And we had bought the shallow rights from Clayton Williams. Clayton Williams comes back and says, hey, y'all already ran title. If y'all can close in 2 weeks, we'll sell you the deep rights. And that was the Wolf Camp, et cetera. And we wound up buying $100 million worth of acreage.
Wow.
And we had never done that at Kane in terms of that. And it was right at the point when Mike and I had taken over the energy funds. And so we did that. And then at some other point, we wound up drilling Wolfcamp wells. They were doing really well. We went to sell. I want to say August of 2014, price just kind of collapsing and all that. So we had a number that was a 2X. And we decided, man, we're just drilling great wells. Let's not sell this. Let's hold on. The collapse happens. And my timing may be off a little. But anyway, at some point, we decided to double down. And what was the wildest part about this story is Concho and the offsetting acreage, right? So we had 26,000 Wolfcamp acres that were checkerboarded with Anadarko. They had 14,000 acres, but it was concentrated, blocked up. And so anyway, we negotiated a price to buy the offsetting acreage from Concho, And what was wild about it is they had drilled 3 well bores, and we said, don't complete them because we were doing different stuff than they were. And so basically what the investor memo said was, if we just replicate what we're doing on the Wolf Camp there, because we can drill long laterals because it's blocked up as opposed to our short laterals, if we just do what we're doing now, it's 20% rate of return if it's simple linear math. You get 2x the reserves for 1.3 the cost. And you kind of like going, okay, that generally happens, but sometimes it doesn't. But you're like, okay. And then you sit there and you go, we sat there and we said, if we can find no, hold on. Here's what it was. If we drill short laterals, it's 20% rate of return. If we drill,
when you say short, what's that? 2,500
one
feet?
section, yeah, 2,500 feet.
Okay, 5,000 feet.
Yeah, so if we just replicated our one section drilling we were doing, because we were checkerboarded with Anadarko and we couldn't work out a deal with them to drill long laterals. If we just replicated that drilling on the Concho acreage, 20% rate of return. If the long laterals work, 2x the reserves for 1.3 times the cost, because you obviously didn't have to drill this part again, 35% rate of return. And you're like going, okay. And generally speaking, that's the way it works out, but it doesn't always work out. And then we were like, if we could just find one more zone that looks anything like the Wolf Camp, then it was a 50% rate of return. They had left 3 well bores there, 2 Wolf Camps, and 1 Avalon. So this new zone. Anyway, so that's all set up there, right? It was all predicated on $40 oil. We signed the PSA when oil was at $31 a barrel. So we signed the PSA, and I threw up that night, just being nervous, right?
Totally.
It's like, man, have you ever been out to West Texas? It sucks. I mean, it's flat and dusty.
We'll get there. I've spent a ton of time
it's
out
like
there.
flat and dusty, and it's shitty. And I'm like, God, I've bet my whole career on this 40,000 acres out there. So anyway, so this was great though. So we immediately complete the 2 Wolf Camp wells, and 90 days later, we've got production on those 2 Wolf Camp wells. And we're definitely on target for 2x the reserves.
Yeah.
The third well, the Avalon well, we completed it as well. 90 days later, it's made more oil than any other well in the field. Now, it's shallower, so there's not as much pressure. So we weren't going to get as big an EUR, but it was cheaper to drill. And so, I mean, within 90 to 120 days, it was a home run. But it took $40 oil, and it was at 31. So anyway, all that came together. We drilled all these great wells. We go put that thing for sale, and we sold it to RSP for $2.5 billion. Made the front page of the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, that's a home run.
Yeah,
that's a home run. That's the best.
Yeah,
the best. And I appreciate the throwing up, because my team will tell you, I live every day in full panic. And
totally.
The panic is driven by just
we all know what to do when things go right? It's when things go wrong. That's when you earn your money.
I mean, it's yes, but I live in panic because I just feel this incredible sense of responsibility to deliver for others. Like I need to deliver for our shareholders. I need to deliver for my partners. I need to deliver for everyone. And so, that fear of I'm betting my career, I'm betting our LPs, everything. But so maybe to go back on kind of Ed and John and our partnership and when it began. So they just giving the history of, because you really hit an interesting time slot. But let's go back, kind of rewind the tape to 2003. In 2003, it's like a lifetime ago, 20 years ago, I was in banking. I was an associate, and Ed and John had been persuading me for the previous 2 years to join them. They had a $40 million MLP. That's Master Limited Partnership. And it was simply gathering gas from shallow Upper Devonian wells in Pennsylvania that they were drilling at their E&P business, which was private. And so it was this $40 million MLP. The entire MLP sector, take a guess. Do you know what's the market cap if you put all the MLPs together in 2003?
I'm going to say 115 billion, but I have no idea.
$5 billion.
No shit.
All together, 2003. Combined market cap was $5 billion.
Were the Boston Celtics
exactly.
still
I
in
was still
MLP back
comping
then?
okay. They weren't really trading, but exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, they were on the comp sheet. So I joined them in January of 2004. with this $40 million MLP called Atlas Pipeline. And the parent company, the general partner, which was also an E&P business, drilling shallow upper Devonian wells in southwestern Pennsylvania. And the first thing we did was we took public Atlas Energy back in May of 2004. We raised, it was an incredible success. We raised $40 million. It was a $200 million market cap. And I'm saying it was an incredible success. We literally priced almost at the top of the range, but there was, I mean, you couldn't really take companies public. It was led by FBR, Friedman Billings Ramsey, and KeyBank. And so we did that in May of 2004. Then we had this pipeline business. And we said, we're in the high splits. We're tiny. We're generating, a very small amount of cash flow, $40 million market cap. We were probably only generating like $6 million of cash flow. And so we went to Oklahoma, and there was a gathering and processing system. It had been turned around by Energy Spectrum. You know those guys?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so Energy Spectrum had turned around this old Chevron Texaco facility in Stevens County, southern Oklahoma. And we paid $140 million, more than tripled the size of the company, to buy this 100 million cubic feet a day cryo facility that had gone from 36 gas-fired compressors down to 5 electric compressors, reducing the costs. So we bought it. It was being sold by Lee Jacoby and Scott Rogan at Lehman Brothers. You know those guys.
Funny,
yeah. So I'm naming names today. I'm going through.
We'll name drop the whole time.
Oh, I'm going to name drop everybody.
There you
so
go.
That's
Perfect.
2004. So that was June of 2004. 9 months later, that was an all POP system. Our cash flows went up because NGLs went up. We were like, oh, this is pretty good. Stock performed well. We actually raised $70 million of equity for Atlas Pipeline with Lehman, who was selling it, as our lead underwriter. But 9 months later, we went back, and I was working actually in Dallas with a guy, Ray Davis.
Sure.
Yeah. So Ray Davis and his partner, Kelsey Warren, had this small pipeline company called Energy Transfer.
Right.
And they had bought these assets from Aquila. And they needed to sell off to pay down debt or for whatever purpose.
Right.
I don't know. These gathering and processing assets. So we bought for $190 million this call it $230 million a day cryo facility in Western Oklahoma into the panhandle of Texas. That was the Granite Wash. So that was good. That was $190 million. Okay, so now we're getting going. 6 months later, it's
You know who was there at Energy Transfer while you were doing that deal?
Tell me.
Former Dallas Cowboys safeties Charlie Waters and Cliff Harris.
Yeah, so
I got this back when I was at Stevens. So I left Stevens in, March of 2001 to go join Kane. So let's call it late 90s. We were meeting with Kelsey and Ray, and they had Cliff Harris and Charlie Waters in the meeting. It was pretty freaking cool.
So I knew.
By the way, Stevens participated in the GP buyout of Energy Transfer, made a fortune. I never got my share, but in fairness, I did leave. So that wasn't.
Well, I mean, they're a whole super interesting story. So, I mean, really unbelievable. So Ray Davis, literally, who, he's a co-owner of the Dallas baseball team.
The Rangers.
Yeah. You'll have to forgive me. I'm not a sports guy.
Right.
I'm an energy guy.
Right.
This is what I do, is energy. Right. But Ray literally negotiated the confidentiality agreement with me. He's was deep in it, and it was a small company. We went to this really small kind of suburban office that was in downtown Dallas. That was
right there off McKinney.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It was the old house.
Yeah,
because at Stevens we were over in the Crescent and we walked to it.
Yeah,
you walked by the convenience store on the corner that had the barbecue place in it. Yeah,
I had never seen anything like it. It was super warm and inviting and wonderful. And there was this young guy, David Brantley, who was there. I don't know if you know him.
I never met David.
He went with Ray after Ray left on that and all of that interesting stuff. But so essentially, though, they were great. They'll factor that is Energy Transfer into a story later on, which is 6 months later. It's now, call it late summer 2006. Or excuse me, late summer 2005, we bought from OG&E a FERC-regulated pipeline at Atlas Pipeline from eastern Oklahoma through Arkansas, 75% of it. 25% was owned by this utility that nobody had ever heard of called Southwestern Energy.
Right.
And they claimed Lehman was also selling this one. And these guys claimed to have a thing called Shale. And, we're skeptical people. So we didn't pay for the Shale, but we wanted the fixed fee income for for the MLP. But literally within weeks, the volumes began to rise. It was moving, it's a 300 million a day FERC regulated pipeline. It was moving 160 million a day. And it was the essentially only takeaway out of Arkansas. And so volumes began to rise. So Chuck, what did we do? We said, well, we also have an E&P business. So we went to our geologists in Pittsburgh and said, hey, do we have any shale? And they said, well, we have this thing called the Marcellus shale, but it probably won't work. Now, they only said that. They were extremely excited because they knew we were skeptical. And we said, well, how much do we have? And we had about 86,000 acres in southwestern Pennsylvania. And we said, and I'm sitting here in Houston, so this is a dangerous thing, but we said we better put aside $50 million and lease up more as quickly as possible before these animals from Texas hear about it and come in here. Now, we were so naive that it really was the animals from Oklahoma that would have come in, Aubrey,
right,
and leased it. But so essentially we put aside $50 million, hired 63 landmen, and then
what year is this?
2005.
So when did Range sell Ohio? Do you remember that?
Remember? That was later.
Because okay, keep going because my shale story about it was later because anyway, keep going.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into
John Walker. Yeah, John Walker bought that at Intervest.
I love
turned it into his MLP.
So John, can I tell you? I'll just diverge for a second. So John Walker is the greatest. I mean, he is the sweetest person in the world. So Jonathan Cohen and I were down at the at Trauber's City,
the Cabo thing.
Yeah, years ago. And the most important thing at the Cabo thing is that your significant other doesn't say anything to embarrass you, right? That's the whole goal because, we all are together with work people. We know what to say, what not to say.
Right.
And I mean, I had one person, we were looking at doing a deal and the CFO, literally day one, we're looking at buying this company, pretty large company, and we're in line to get food at the buffet. And I'm like, oh, so-and-so, do you play much golf? He's like, no, we're way too busy. And his wife says, what are you talking about? You play 5 days a week minimum. I can never find you. You're always playing golf.
That's awesome.
So in this situation with John Walker, we're in a van. My wife's there. And we start talking. His wife had gone to the organic farm.
Right.
And I said, well, we have a bit of an organic farm at our house in New Jersey. And my wife's like, no, we don't. That's ridiculous. I'm like, no, with the tomatoes. I mean, it was a little garden we had. She's like, you didn't even plant that. That was the kids with the babysitter. It was so embarrassing. But John's just the best.
So here's my John Walker story. So I think we've done it 15 times now, but I throw a roast each year, a charity roast.
I've seen that.
Yeah. For YDC, the Youth Development Center that I'm on the board of, run an after-school literacy program in Houston's 5th Ward.
Amazing.
So the very first year we do this, I'll just say it was a shit show because nobody understood what a roast was. I mean, I grew up watching the Dean Martin roast and the Comedy Central roast. So I knew what a roast was. Everybody else kind of thought it was an honorary type dinner. And so anyway, John's one of the roasters. I'm one of the roasters because it's Mike Lynn.
Sorry, John Walker was roasting?
Was roasting.
That's amazing. I can't imagine.
He became the man of the hour later, but that's a whole nother story.
So he's Mike Lynn.
So Mike Lynn's the man of the hour. So John gets up there, kind of makes fun of him. I get up there, and part of a roast is you make fun of the other roasters as well as the man of the hour. And so, John was, I believe, 40 when he married Lisa, and she was 20, right?
Mm-hmm.
UT cheerleader. So anyway, I'm up there, and I'm like, John, when she registers at Toys R Us, she's just too young. You can't get married. I'm just having a roast. And then I say, when her curfew's at 10 p.m., she's too young. So Lisa gets up and leaves. Anyway, about a third of the room got up and left that night. Anyway, it was a bit of a mess, but we still have a roast today and it works very well. I called John the next morning and I'm like, John, I'm so sorry. I saw Lisa leaving. I feel so bad about that. I am apologetic. I would love to call Lisa and apologize. John doesn't miss a beat. He goes, Chuck, my favorite charity is the Boy Scouts of America, the Houston Council. And I went, is there a suggested donation to the Boy Scouts of America that might be appropriate at this time? John spit out a number. I wrote a check, mailed it in. He's never mentioned it again, and we've been best friends ever since.
It's amazing. That's
didn't
so
even, just Chuck, my favorite charity, didn't acknowledge it, didn't accept the apology, didn't say anything mean, just my favorite charity. I was like, there we go.
What a sweetheart.
Yeah, what a great guy.
And it really speaks to what I love so much about our industry, which is some of the most philanthropic and giving people. It's literally, instead of it being about John, it's about how can we help other people.
No,
exactly what you started.
None of the charities really went broke, even when oil was minus 37.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. So
I diverted you. So
yeah,
anyway,
so we had this. Yeah, we had 86,000 acres before you animals from Texas got wind of it. It's 2005. We accumulated an incremental 260,000 acres. So we had 340,000 acres. And then for those who are less familiar with Atlas and Atlas Energy, we then drilled more wells in the Marcellus Shale than any company between 2005 and 2010.
Now, were y'all drilling horizontals and fracking, or was it actually some vertical? There was some vertical work in the Marcellus for a while, albeit a small amount. Yeah.
We drilled the first dry gas horizontal shale well in the Marcellus. It took us 9 months, cost us $12 million. We only put away. We only got 1,500 feet horizontally. We only put away 500 feet of casing, and we shotgunned it. It was a disaster. But I'll tell you, 10 years later, when we sold the company, it was still producing like 500 MCF a day. And it produced. Yeah. And as soon as it produced, we're like, we've got something here. This is interesting. So we drilled a lot of vertical wells. We hired a guy, Tommy Thompson, from Oxy, to come in and drill because we were traditionally vertical, shallow, upper Devonian drillers. We needed an actual highly capable team. So Tommy came in from Oxy. He was what we called, or what Ed called, the well whisperer. I have no idea what the hell that means. Right. But in any case, good. Tommy did not have to shotgun any wells and he got off all of the wells under budget, on schedule. He was amazing. And we were off and running. And then we followed the great Aubrey McClendon, which I'll come back to Aubrey, and hired Ralph Eads. Another name drop for you.
There you go.
We hired Ralph and Ajay to lead a joint venture for us. And this was 2009. So, it was interesting. We ended up flying around the world in early 2010, met with the 18 largest energy companies in the world in this joint venture process. And Ralph, you know Ralph well?
Speaking of the roast, I think there's been enough time that has passed that we can share this story.
Great.
Ralph was supposed to be a roaster at the first roast of Mike Lynn. And George Sanfilippo got up there, and in fairness, like, if everybody would have known it was roast, it probably would have been okay. And had George sat down after 7 minutes, probably would have been okay. He went on for 45 minutes. Totally offended Ralph. Ralph got up and took all the Jeffries people and left. Yeah.
No.
Yes. Ralph and I are good friends to this day. We've patched everything up, but yeah, that was kind of a mess.
Yeah, that's a disaster.
I'm a big Ralph fan. I mean, as impressive a banker as there is out there.
Yeah, he's an animal. And
he's great.
So he led our joint venture. We flew around the world, and we met with the 18 largest energy companies. And Ralph had this approach where he's like, we're going to send a term sheet out, which is the terms we're willing to do a deal, including the price. Now, I've never heard of such a thing. And he put forward the highest price by a multiple of 2 that anybody had ever paid for acreage in the Marcellus.
Let's brag on Ralph one more time, because you probably saw this doing it. So Ralph would do that. The other thing he was the best at is convincing somebody why they could pay that.
Yeah.
He did the best job of laying out the modeling work. Here's how Wall Street's going to look at this. This is why when you pay this, your stock price is going to double. Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
We met with the 18 largest energy companies. This is early 2010. We narrowed it down to 2 majors, BP, Chevron, and Mukesh Ambani, who controls Reliance Industries. At the time, Mukesh was the 4th wealthiest man in the world. Today, I think he's number 8 in the world as far as wealth. So amazing. BP actually, and this is what really changed our entire thinking, took us on a tour here in Houston, actually pretty close to where we are, of their facility. And they said, listen, anybody can pay you what you're asking. What we can offer you is the hive in technology. And they took us on a tour, no bankers, just us, of their facilities. And honestly, Chuck, it blew at least me, and I would say us, away. Because what they were able to do and see was so far ahead. I mean, it felt like it was like a light. I mean, it was 10 years ahead of anything we would ever be capable of doing. And we said, holy shit, like this is a big person's game, and I'm not sure we're the right people. But in any case, we didn't say that in our joint venture. We did the deal with Mukesh. They paid $14,100 per acre, a record $1.7 billion to partner with us. 2 months later, probably orchestrated by Ralph, the runner-up, Chevron came back to us. I guess I should also say, unfortunately, literally a month later, the Macondo well happened with BP. So we were very fortunate we didn't do the JV with BP. But 2 months later, Chevron came back to us after we did the JV with Mukesh, and they said, hey, we like the Marcellus. This was our first kind of look into the shale. We love your JV terms, which Ralph had helped us structure the most incredible terms. How about we buy your company? And we were the best trading mid-cap E&P company in the space, and they offered us a 50% premium. And we said to ourselves, well, there's about 1,000 things we can identify that can go wrong. And there's probably 10 times that, but we can only identify 1,000 things. But most of all, gas is at $6 an MCF. Exxon just bought XTO. Shell just bought East Resources, Terry Pagula's company, owner of the Bills, current owner of the Bills. And we're probably not even that good at finding natural gas. And so if those guys are coming in, we probably should sell our company because gas might go from 6 to a much lower price. And so we sold the company. We signed the deal in late 2010, $4.3 billion from the $200 million IPO. It was a 931% return. It was tremendously exciting. And that was just great. And the team loved it. And that was the Marcellus situation. But unfortunately for them, they didn't want, that is for Chevron didn't want 2 pieces. They didn't want the pipeline company, which I didn't forget about. We had this publicly traded MLP that had been out there. Right. And they didn't want the shallow upper Devonian wells that were HBPing, holding high production, all of the Marcellus. So, and this is where I geek out. I love the structuring and how to come up with solutions. So what we did is with that transaction, with the help of Wachtell Lipton and Skadden Arps, was we structured a deal where we spun off the general partner, that is a shareholder of Atlas Energy, got cash from Chevron plus a share of the general partner of the pipeline company, which we had been expanding in Oklahoma and then into Texas over 2006 to 2010. And then we took the shallow upper Devonian wells, which they didn't want, and we actually put it into the general partner as well. I'll come back to that because this comes back to when you and I last saw each other 10 years ago. But so we sell the company to Chevron, closes in February 2011. We literally celebrate by going for the first time to the city event in Cabo. My wife was not at that event. This was literally coincided. It was one of the great celebrations.
Oh, of course.
Eric Shire. You don't know Shire? He runs Magnetar's energy group.
No.
So he was there. He's a dear friend. He has been a partner of ours in various forms since 2007. I mean, he's like, you guys just look incredibly serene. And
of course,
we were happy at that point.
4.2 billion reasons to be serene.
Well, for our shareholders,
yes,
most importantly. But the reality is that was 2011. It literally was 11 years from that point to the next point of serenity. But in any case, we then have this pipeline company. It's Oklahoma, Texas, no leverage. And we said, we see the growth that's coming. Let's organically build on what we're doing. And I'm leaving out a little bit of tidbits. In 2007, we happened to buy a $1.8 billion asset from Al Walker at Anadarko in Oklahoma and in Texas. And that was extremely dramatic. We could spend hours on that deal. That was you're friends with Jameson?
Yeah.
Yeah. That
not great friends.
So that was a Michael Jameson special.
I'm still pissed. He busted me out of the World Women's Poker Tournament, I think like 9 years ago. So
really?
I still hold a grudge, but it's okay.
Can I tell you, he's a real poker player.
He's good.
I started a poker event for our community up in New Jersey like 11 years ago. It's been amazing. It's like anything outside of Texas is like small. It really is. So it's like a miniature version of what you guys do here. But Jameson's come to it, which was amazing.
Really?
Oh yeah. And like we've had incredible corporate sponsorships from Citi to Wells Fargo to Sherman and Sterling, et cetera.
I made the final table that year. So I went out at number 9. So I didn't.
But he took you out?
He took me out. Well, So my deal is I've never played that much poker, and Carl Brunsicki.
Yeah, of course.
Carl's the best poker player in the industry, right?
Is he?
He's won the World Women's Poker Tournament, I think 3 or 4 times. Great story, by the way. So Carl wins it one year, and he's pounding Red Bulls and vodka. So he is just ripped. And anyway, he wins it. There's always the big dinner afterwards. I'm standing in front of the restaurant. Carl comes walking up and goes, "Chuck, I won!" And he hugs me, right? And he falls asleep.
No.
So I'm sitting there holding him, and people keep walking in for dinner, and they're like going, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "He's asleep," And Carl's one of my dearest friends, so I'm just holding him for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. He's asleep. He wakes up, looks at me. "I won!"
It's amazing.
But anyway, so I'm going out to the poker tournament with Carl, and I go, "Carl, what's the problem? You've seen me play. I know math. I know all this. I get busted out early." He goes, "Chuck, you pay for too many flops." He goes, "I don't want you to play a hand unless you're willing to raise it. Good enough to play, good enough to raise." So I said, "Okay, I'm going to do that." So I played, it's a one-day poker tournament. I played 14 hands. I won 12 of them, and I made the final table, but I literally just sat there and folded the whole time. Willing to raise? Nope. Okay.
That's the
key. Playing good poker is playing boring poker.
It's
folding.
Just patience.
Yeah, it's patience.
And you have the ability to be like disciplined.
I did that one day.
Yeah, because I don't see you as the type who can just sit there and like
totally
wait it out.
Yeah,
like,
I did that one day. So I can tell everybody I made the final table one year. I'm going to play again this year, and I'm sure I'll get busted out in 20 minutes. I'll be out by the pool getting the champagne bath.
Yeah,
but
I have to tell you, isn't that more fun?
It's a lot more fun.
Yeah, I don't get poker. I really don't.
So this year, actually, at the World Women's Poker Tournament, they're going to set up the podcasting booth. So as you get busted out, they're going to want you to come by and spend 2 minutes on the podcast.
Do you know when it is? I may actually go this year.
It's late April, and if you need an invite, I can get you with Kurt Hartman to get you an invite.
Perfect. You usually,
it may be sold out, so let's be timely on that.
Yeah. I used to get the invite when I was running public companies, but now that I'm at WhiteHawk, I was dropped, I guess.
Yeah,
it's very upsetting.
It's kind of like my NAPE party invites. Dave Baggett at Opportune still invites me, and Kirkland still invites me. But outside of that, I don't get the invites
Well,
anymore.
I saw a picture of Kirkland, and someone's like, "This is amazing." They had like the ice. Was it Kirkland that had the ice like bar?
Probably.
Yeah.
And Opportune does that too. So yeah, it could have been either one of them.
How was NAPE? I have a long.
Supposedly only 7,000 people were inside. And I mean, peak NAPE was what, 20?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But I mean, so I have a long-standing no NAPE policy. Like I will not go, and that sounds obnoxious. And yes, there's part of me that is super obnoxious, but it actually stems from like our team would go, and every time they would come back, they had the world's greatest deal that had been presented at NAPE.
Right.
And so I'm just like, I don't think that's the world's greatest deal. So I come the week after NAPE to be able to come and sit with you and sit with my other friends, and talk about what's really going on.
If the deal got out of Shreveport, if the deal got out of Midland, you're getting screwed somehow.
Yeah.
Basically that concept. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on display on the floor, it's not the world's greatest deal.
Well, but NAPE, I mean, beyond the actual convention itself, I assume it was great networking, great to see everybody.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes and no. The kind of think what happens is, you go to the Four Seasons bar and it's great, but you get 2 minutes with everyone.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of nice to say hello, but
This is exactly my point. And we had my CFO, Jeff Slaughter, back, and my COO, Mike Downs. They were down here. They loved it. It was like speed dating.
Right.
But I just think building long-term one-on-one relationships, and for everybody, I think that's really the best way to go. And it's great to hang out. Don't get me wrong. Going out, partying together is great. If that's kind of your thing, but there's a lot to be said for when things are quiet and people have time to just sit around and actually just talk.
To actually, we'll stick with the analogy, to be in a relationship with someone, potentially you do have to speed date, so that you can meet them. But I think you're right on that.
So are you in a relationship?
I actually am. I have a girlfriend.
That's what I thought I did, but I didn't want to be.
It's funny, as I like to say, I've been dating her for 7.5 months, and she's been dating me for about 6.5.
That's great. Yeah. That's extremely exciting.
It's funny. We had been dating, let's call it, 5.5 months or so, and she broke up with me, booted me. Claiming I wasn't being affectionate enough, I wasn't engaged enough. And to her credit, she was absolutely right about that. I mean, 2022 was just kind of I don't know. I might have been clinically depressed in 2022. Now, I wasn't going to jump off a building or anything. Yeah. It wasn't that, but
can I ask what was driving that feeling?
The short answer is I don't know, because I've had a ton of therapy in my life. So when I got separated from my ex-wife, threw myself into therapy. I've read every Brene Brown book. You tick on down the list. So I'm usually pretty good about introspection. I've got all the skills I need to deal with. I think what happened in 2022, and I think this was common for everyone, just kind of going through the whole COVID mess, and there was a lot of alone time out in by myself in Richmond, Texas. But I think what really kind of took hold was there was not a consequence to my inaction. If I didn't drop a podcast one week, the world didn't end. Mm-hmm. If, that roast we were talking about earlier that I did, I kind of half-assed it. We had the third largest roast we ever had, raised over $1 million. So there was nothing bad happening. So I was kind of half-assing this relationship.
But is it fair? So I ask, of course, in part related to my own kind of emotions and thinking about how I feel about things. And I think a lot of people really benefit, from you sharing your experience with that. And, is it is it more like a lack of passion? You're used to feeling so much passion about things and you weren't feeling that passion last year?
So it was interesting. So, one of the things that happened to me is when you get booted from a private equity firm, 99% of the time they say, hey, let us buy you out of your LP interest. Or they say, hey, at a minimum, if we can't agree on a value, we'll just freeze your capital accounts. So you don't have to make
Yeah.
You know, we know you would not have been the largest individual LP in this fund if, one, you weren't going to be part of the GP making the decisions, and two, you wouldn't have the management fees coming from that, right? So that's how 99 Kane doesn't do it that way. So I basically had hanging over my head that, and this was the math I did. This was kind of crazy. So I get fired. A couple of days later, I'm sitting there with a white sheet of paper, and I go, okay, let's do assets and liabilities.
Yep.
I know how to do a balance sheet. So we do the Yates family balance sheet, and I look down, and I go, I'm all right. You know, I don't have to rush out and get another job. Probably got to sell the plane. That sort of sucks, but okay, we'll do that. Then I said, well, let's do some downside scenarios, right? Because that's what we do, right?
Yes.
Because when things go well, we know what to do. Let's do the downside scenario. So I went and said, okay, every LP interest I have at Kane, which was the dominant holding in the family portfolio, right? Let's say it's worth zero, you know, and maybe if they don't pay anything out in 10 years, it is worth zero even, you know. So I did that, and I still look at that, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm all right. Then I did this math. I said, okay, let's assume Kane calls every dollar they can under these partnership agreements, and I'm on the hook because they didn't let me off from that. My net worth was $82,000.
Yeah.
You know, and that was minus liabilities that were getting the kids through college.
Sure.
So that the kids would have gotten through college and all that. But so anyway, I kind of lived, you know, 2 years under that of any given day. You can get a cash call notice and you're going to be worth.
Non-consent.
You can non-consent, then potentially they can sue you, you know?
Yeah.
And all that. And so anyway, I was, you know, but I was able to sell those interests and get out from under that. And I was telling my priest, who's one of my best friends, and he plays my therapist these days. I was going, yeah, you know, nothing but good stuff has kind of happened this year. I have no idea why I'm feeling blah. And he goes, dude, you've been holding your breath for 2 freaking years, man. That just sucks.
Yeah.
Even if good. So I don't really know what it was. It was just kind of this funk. Now, my working theory is I had COVID December of 2021. I tested negative, but I know I had it. Lost sense of smell, taste. I mean, headache. I had all the symptoms. There is a long-term, they call it COVID brain fog, something like that.
I had that when I had it in August of this last year.
So I may have had that for a year. That may have been driving. But
that's interesting. That's an interesting. That said, you know, I did see like you leaving meditation. I think you said something like I saw you had been meditating. Do you meditate?
Not as much as I should.
So, I mean, then this is way off energy, which I want to get back to, but like I am deep and have been for coming up on 19 years of meditating. Huge believer in the benefits. And I really think for everybody, like I know it's a little woo-woo, but like it is game changing. And I don't sit in in any lotus position and I don't put my hands like this and I'm not quiet. I listen to guided meditations, which is like basically you can switch whatever subject you want, but like you can have basically pep talks as to Chuck, why you're the greatest, why today is your day, why everything great is attracted to you. And you can really feel great, or you could go a little bit less and let go of, you know.
Well, name any other body process that doesn't benefit from rest.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you work out really hard. What do? You know, you go take an ice bath or you go sit in the sauna and you rest. And so, one of my best friends on the planet is actually the singer Jewel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
she's amazing.
She's amazing. And she swears by it. I mean, like, you know, you're hanging out and it's like, time to go meditate. I will see you in 30 minutes. And, you know, it didn't, So like, I mean, just to even give you, and for your own benefit, what I do, my practice, I actually put a heating pad down on the floor. I get up at 5 a.m. every day, I get my coffee, watch CNBC for 30 minutes. Then I go and meditate for 30 to 40 minutes. And I lay down on a heating pad, laying down, put a blanket folded up under my head, super comfortable. And I lay there and I get to listen to whatever subject I want. And it feels amazing. And then I go shave, shower. And I've been for the last month, I've moved into this ice shower. So I finish my shower, which I also highly recommend
like 2 minutes of super cold.
Yeah.
And then I'm fired up and ready to kick some ass.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I mean, she's a true believer. I think what's turned into my meditation is I go on a lot of 3-hour walks.
That's meditating. Absolutely.
And I'm walking around downtown Richmond, and the prettiest part of Richmond is you walk down, you go over the tracks. We have a park, and then we have an old cemetery. So like Jane Long, the mother of Texas, and Maribel B. Lamar, the second president of Texas, are buried over in this old cemetery. But you got all these old big trees everywhere. And so
and
that's...
are you, like, when you're doing those walks, and then we'll get back to energy, are you letting go of everything and just being mindful about like the noises and the feet, the way your feet feel on the ground?
Exactly. I mean, and that's what,
it's great.
And the thing that was a game changer, and this may sound kind of hokey, was when I really focused on feeling the sun. That really did a lot for me.
That light, light is, and this is not intended. Well, on my Twitter account, I have this, my banner. I just kind of started on Twitter a few months ago. But I have a quote by Einstein, which is, energy is everything. And that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the quote, but energy is everything. And that's all there is to it. And the double entendre there is we're in energy. Totally. And so, but at the same time, what I'm really talking about is the energy of the sun, the energy of the universe, the energy of physics, and the fact that you literally can change your energy to feeling amazing. And if everybody just takes a deep breath, a big deep breath, and lets go and says, wait, at this very moment, everything is perfect. Like, not 2 minutes from now, not 2 minutes ago, not 30 seconds ago, right in this very moment. So, it's all good.
So you know what? So what's interesting about that is Brene Brown, in all of her research that she's done, was always very skeptical of breathing. Because everybody has kind of breathing techniques and all that. And what converted her to breathing and being able to make you mindful and put you in the moment was she went and hung out with the Navy SEALs. And the Navy SEALs are going in, getting shot at, and they're sitting there eating an apple while they do it, and they're able to do it. And Navy SEALs is pretty simple. In 1, 2, 3, 4, hold 1, 2, 3, 4, out 1, 2, 3, 4.
These guys are the greatest. I mean, on this planet, the Navy SEALs, I would suggest, there's probably no greater. There may be people who approach, but they're remarkable, unbelievable what they're capable of doing.
Yeah, no, it's pretty amazing. But so just real quick to get back. So got my shit together during December, did a lot of groveling, got back with the girlfriend on New Year's Eve. Supposedly, I'm being a model boyfriend. I'm scoring really well on this.
It's Valentine's Day. Don't forget, it's Valentine's Day is coming up.
All over.
Are you?
Oh, I've already nailed it.
That's great.
I've already nailed it. I've hit the ball out of the park on this. But so actually the journey I went on of getting broken up with to getting back together, I'm going to do it's going to be 3 to 4 episodes of the podcast. And I'm calling it Chuck Yates Needs a Wife, because we had that working title for we were going to do a dating show of me, and obviously dating someone that's probably not advised, but just telling the story of what I went through, because there were kind of 4-ish seminal moments in that month of shit that happened that really caused me to get my head right, and I kind of feel the need to tell that story. So
that's great. I can't wait to hear it.
And I forced the first podcast I did this year is like 7 minutes. I recorded it sitting right there on my iPhone.
Yeah, I saw that one.
And I basically talked about it. So now I'm committed. I have to do it.
Right.
That's what I did.
Well, that's the best way to do things I want to come back to kind of talking through the energy cycles, because I think it's kind of good history for, we talked about shale emerging in the Marcellus.
These guys had no idea that weather used to matter.
Yeah.
It's like you talk to a young person, wow, this weather stuff matters. I go, oh yeah.
Well, I appreciate that you're in long sleeves, because it's like 70, like 75 here. I'm in a sweater, mostly because I'm like aspirationally hoping that it's cold out.
I know.
And I'm actually headed to Chicago after this, but like, weather actually matters. I mean, it's kind of important. But so just kind of on the back where we left it on the pipeline side, we had Atlas Pipeline, unlevered, and it's 2011. And so we decided to organically build on what we had, and we became the second largest pipeline and processing business in Oklahoma and the largest pipeline and processing business in the Permian Basin. So you mentioned, have I been to Midland, that DoubleTree in Midland?
Oh, yeah. Good cookies, but man,
The
it's not the
shittiest hotel.
not the greatest hotel on the planet.
I mean, I've stayed in really bad hotels. I'll put that up against any bad hotel.
Particularly during a boom when you're paying $500
That's
for the
probably
room.
why.
That really
it's
sucks.
like it's too much. That's
I
a
still-
$100 room. It's a $100 room.
I still don't understand why, in anticipation of a boom, a nice boutique has not opened.
So
there.
I actually spoke to some people about this. So, and yeah, just shout out to Denny Latham, who ran our operations in the Permian in West
Right.
Texas, still at Targa, the greatest. Texting with him a few weeks ago. I think it's a zoning issue. Like it's a serious lockdown, and the people who are listening who know Midland,
right.
Case, I'm sure will be all over me. But as it's been described to me, it's very hard and very difficult to get the right zoning for the right hotel.
And the other thing I've heard too is you physically just can't get people.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's so in any case, spend a ton of time out there. And then in 2014, we said, okay, MLPs 2014. We said back in 2004, 2003, the entire market cap of the MLP space was $5 billion. In 2014, what do you think the MLP space was, combined market cap?
$785 billion.
Well, that's a pretty good guess. It was $500 billion, a little more than $500 billion.
Okay.
So it had grown from $5 billion to $500 billion. And we said, boy, oil's $100 a barrel. MLPs are hotter than hot. Maybe we should sell. Interviewed.
Yields are at 2% and 3%.
Yeah. GPs, which we had a publicly traded GP at this point. GPs were 25 times multiples. We went to our friend, Michael Jameson, your nemesis, your poker nemesis.
My poker nemesis.
And we said to him, hey, we should consider selling the company. And we ended up interviewing the 9 largest pipeline companies. And it came down to, this is 2014, actually Targa was rumored to be that they were going to be bought by Energy Transfer and Kelsey Warren.
Okay.
And Targa's stock had rocketed to $150 a share,
right.
which I think actually prevented them from doing a deal. So their deal kind of fell apart late summer. We had other people who wanted to buy us, but the two of them separately, without knowing, came back to us. And this is when Jamie Welsh was Kelsey's guy running around. Jamie?
I don't know Jamie. I know of Jamie, but I don't know Jamie.
I can only describe him by the nickname I've heard, which is the Tasmanian Devil.
Yeah.
Like, I know Jamie a little. He was like the ultimate animal in the space. And so it was Energy Transfer and Targa. And we ended up selling to Targa for $7.7 billion Atlas Pipeline, which was a 420% return to the limited partners from the IPO, plus $2 billion for the general partner.
Oh, yeah.
And remember, we gave the general partner to the shareholders as a dividend in connection with the Chevron sale. So it was an infinite return.
Right.
So we had that kind of then. Oh, by the way, we signed that deal, Chuck, in October of 2014.
Nice.
So for those people who are less familiar, you won't know this, but I was in Milwaukee, my hometown. And I'll remember it like it was yesterday. I'm getting chills. It was Thanksgiving 2014. What happens? Saudi Arabia is supposed to cut, OPEC's supposed to cut oil production because, production's rising in the US and they need to reduce their share. They did the opposite, increased oil production. What happened? Oil began to fall every single day. And we had 2 public companies that needed votes on our side. They had 1 public company on their side. They had a public GP that needed a vote. The MLP did not need a vote. And literally the deal, this is $7.7 billion deal. Oh, Kelsey went on to sign the deal with Williams.
Yep.
That he then was able to legally get out of.
Right.
So thankfully we did the deal.
Great
with
lawyering there. Couldn't get a tax opinion.
Yeah. So Joe Bob Perkins, who was running Targa, the best, Joe Bob knew his stock was, trading well. He knew he had these great fractionators at the Gulf Coast that he was building and expanding. He knew we had an amazing asset in the Midland Basin, anchored by a 15-year dedication by Pioneer, in great partnership with Scott Sheffield and the Pioneer team, who owned 27% of those assets. And so he said, we're doing this deal. And in fact, Jonathan Cohen and I met with one of the most well-known activist investors in January of 2015. And this was between signing and closing. He's like, so what are you guys going to do when this deal falls apart? The merger arb had blown out. It was it was a disaster. And Joe Bob got up at a conference, the CS conference, I believe it was in Vail, and he said, we're doing this deal. Merger arb closed. That was mid-January. Did the deal. Joe Bob is true to his word and was so dead right in doing that deal and upgrading that company. I think it was tremendous for all investors. So that we closed that deal.
We wound up selling the Silver Hill gathering system to Targa.
Yeah. And shout out to Pat McDonough, who's one of the senior guys over there. He was our guy at Atlas Pipeline. Another Joe Bob benefit in amazing leadership in most mergers, as you know, whoever buys, their management team wins. Right. Joe Bob went out of his way to say, we're going to keep the best people. I don't care if they were at Targa or if they were at Atlas Pipeline. And they did a great job. That's a real thing I think people forget to do is make sure they're, keeping the best people. So that was 2015. It wasn't all sunshine and roses. We had one company called Atlas Resource Partners. It was an E&P MLP. You talk about Mike Lynn. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even get into our first E&P MLP, which was successful. We merged back in. We were the second E&P MLP. We took that public in December of 2006, right behind Lynn Energy. And by the way, you should have been roasting Koya.
Oh, we roasted Koya year 5.
Really?
So this was great. So it was July of, I forget which year it was, but we had not found a man of the hour yet. So I was like, and Koya, I love Koya to death. He had been negotiating with me because he wanted to be the man of the hour. So I was like, guys, we can't find somebody else to get roasted. So I text Koya and I was like, hey, dude, are you in a good mood? And he goes, I'm actually in Paris. What's up? And I said, all right, pretend we're at Vic and Anthony's. We got a big steak, big cigars, big bottle of heavy cab. I'm down on one knee. In my sweetest voice, I'm saying, will you be the man of the hour of this year's roast? And I'm laying it on thick, and Kolya texts back, you had me at hello. But so we roasted Kolya that year. And what was great is it was almost out of Spinal Tap. He had himself lowered down from the top of the House of Blues.
For the roast?
For the roast. And he was kind of spinning around.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So was this before or after his wedding?
This was before the wedding.
Because the wedding was crazy.
Oh, the wedding was great. I was there.
Were you?
Oh, yeah. I was totally at the wedding.
Amazing.
He comes out dancing and the people spiraling around at the Corinthian.
Yeah. It was unbelievable. I mean, I only saw it on YouTube, and I actually saw it because one of his shareholders said, actually it was an analyst for this multi-billionaire, who said, if my boss saw this video, he would literally drop dead. Right. He would drop dead on the spot.
And it was full on Kolya.
Yeah, it's great. I mean,
so what was the general counsel's name at Lynn? I'm blanking on her name.
I have no clue.
Oh gosh, I got to find this. Hold on, because I've got my favorite roast joke that year. My favorite, Charlene Ripley. She was general counsel, and Kolya was engaged at that point. What's his wife's name?
I don't know, but I know.
Why am I blanking? Let's call her Mary. I can't believe I'm blanking on her name. Anyway, I apologize.
You were at the wedding.
Oh yeah, I was at the wedding. No, so anyway, I said, Kolya, congratulations on getting engaged to Mary. Who's more relieved about that, Mary or Charlene Ripley? Because Mary was his assistant for a while. Yeah, that was.
Oh yeah, I remember from
Roxanne.
Roxanne.
Okay. Yeah. Roxanne. Who's more relieved, Roxanne or Charlene Ripley? That was my favorite joke. And like 3 people in the audience got it, but they laughed hard.
Well, I mean, I would have gotten it because I remember being in Vegas at the city MLP
Roxanne's
conference. Cool. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
and,
she's awesome.
Koya, you know what I appreciate? People who are who they are, and they just are themselves.
Oh, and I will say this. You can say all you want to about Kolya Rockoff. I'll do a deal with him on a handshake.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Kolya.
Exactly.
We actually did when Lynn Energy bought Stallion from us. There were so many moving pieces that were going to have to happen in 48 hours because they were going to have to go raise the money and all this mess that I just looked Kolya in the eyes and said, I do it if you do it. Are we doing this? And we didn't have paper signed. And Kolya said, let me call Mike, call him back. And he said, we're in. And I said, okay, we're in. And we got it done.
Yeah. Well, and that's why, like, to me, like, that's why I like Kolya. I like people who are not full of shit. And like, there's people who are, they have to monitor everything they say. And then, it's just so manipulative. I
think the lies of omission are the ones that get you the most. If somebody just flat out lies to you, you can kind of deal with that because they're an asshole or whatever. But when someone allows you to think something and they should correct you and they don't, that's interesting. The worst.
I don't know that I've ever had that. I'm a naive person though. Like, I don't even know, like with my kids, I've had it. But.
You're right. But, like in business, it's like, something's going on and they could correct you of, like if a lie of admission would have been, the stock went down $1.50 and the board wasn't going to let them sell the stock. When he and I said we're doing it, we said we're doing it. If that had been true, he needed to say, hey, just so you know, we're doing it. But if our stock goes down $1.50, I can't do it.
Yeah. Got it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When people don't share that sort of stuff,
I mean, I always say, and I've a little bit more to the story of the evolution of as Daniel Herz sees it, third person. Energy.
You know who the greatest about talking about themselves in the third person?
George Costanza.
George was pretty good. Ricky Henderson.
Really?
Yeah. Ricky Henderson would walk around supposedly the clubhouse and be like, Ricky's breaking cleats today. And people were like, what the hell does that mean? Ricky doesn't like it when Ricky's limo's late.
That's amazing. But I don't think of it saying myself in the third person when you're saying from Daniel Herz's perspective. It's more like, because I think, it's pretty douchey to say, speak in the third person unless you're Ricky Henderson.
Yeah.
Or George Costanza.
The greatest was, Brian Cashman, before he was GM of the Yankees, he was an accountant, right?
Yeah.
And he's tracking down a bonus check that Ricky Henderson hasn't cashed in 8 months. So he calls Rick and he's like, hey, you never cashed that check. Do I need to cut you another one? What's going on? And Ricky says, no, I got the check. I'm just waiting for interest rates to go up.
That's amazing.
Isn't that
exactly.
Awesome?
That's awesome.
Ricky's waiting. Yeah.
Ricky's waiting on interest.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I guess, it's 2015. We had some great wins, but we had one company. It was an E&P MLP that was not sold. It had 14,000 oil and gas wells in 12 states. And this is, so basically the guy who was running that business for us had shares in all of the other companies. And he said, it was early 2015, prices had collapsed. He's like, I'm going to just go ahead and retire now.
Called in rich.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. He's like,
called in rich.
And he, by the way, he was only like 50. Hasn't worked. Yeah. It's been,
God bless him.
Yeah, it's insane.
Hero.
So he says, you know what? And so I stepped in to go restructure that company. And that was early 2015. I stepped in as CEO. We had 700 employees operating in 12 states. And we negotiated a prepackaged bankruptcy with our bondholders, second lien holders, and 26 banks over a year and a half, which was amazing. 99%. We were in and out of court in 30 days. And the group asked me to continue as CEO which I did for the following 2 years from 2016 to 2018. And, I'll tell you one quick story. So I think I can say this. I'll say it. Mike Milken was one of our big bondholders individually. And he was amazing. And he also I think it was Den of Thieves was also a book that inspired me. So
Right.
I literally, the first time I was speaking to Milken, who, for those who don't know, was like the person who made up the junk bond industry, which is high yield bonds. He
Right.
made it up at Drexel in the 80s, which led to the LBO craze, which led to Barbarians at the Gate, et cetera. So the first time I'm speaking to Milken, I'm in my office at home, and I literally took a selfie of me on the phone with Milken. I was so excited. But so we ended up working with him over, probably a year period. And he was amazing, going out to LA to visit him over and over, got to know him reasonably well. And he said, Daniel, it's been so, at the end, he's like, it's been so great getting to know you. And I just appreciate everything you've done. I just wish it hadn't cost me $50 million.
Nice.
It was kind of, I felt it wasn't me though. And he knew it wasn't me. I stepped in to help fix the situation. So we did that. And
so
then,
here's my Milken story. So
good.
Bob Sonata, was CEO of Kane. So Bob calls me one day and goes, what are you doing tomorrow? And I go, I'm coming to work probably. He goes, you want to be in a meeting with Michael Milken? I'm like, oh, hell yeah. So I get on the plane that night, fly out to LA. We go to a meeting. And basically Milken, I forget when this was, but let's call it maybe 2015 or 16. It was one of those depressed energy periods. And, his whole take was, look, here's what we do. We buy up all the bonds at 25 cents on the dollar. We go to management and we incentivize management to, in effect, dilute the hell out of the equity holders, but pay off the bond holders. And that's how we make our money. And it all comes down to the negotiation with management. And Bob Sonat looked at Michael Milken and said, Michael, you can't negotiate with rock. That's great. But anyways, I sat there. I had a 2-hour meeting. He's brilliant.
Brilliant.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
And actually he had a guy, was Carl Meyer there?
I don't know. He had a team.
So Carl, who runs, I want to say it's like Silver Hill Capital or something, which, he's a genius. He actually worked at Citi and kind of helped lead them through the 2008 financial collapse at Citi. So Milken's probably the smartest person I've ever been with. Literally within 10 minutes of our first meeting, he's like, this is a double dip situation. You're going to go chapter 22. Like he's like, there's no question. He knew exactly what was going on. We didn't, I'm proud to say, but could have, should have.
No, he's wicked smart.
Yeah, he's amazing. And
he knew, I forget which company we were talking about. Let's make one up, Exco or whatever. It
could have been any of them. Everyone went bankrupt.
Could have been any of them, but he knew the numbers. Yeah. And I'd studied it on the plane out there. And I'm being the goofhead that I am, I'm a decent numbers guy. And it was pretty impressive watching.
Yeah. He's amazing. And so we was doing that. And I think it's important. So now we had this beginning of 04 to 14, oil kind of blows up. MLPs, of course, begin to disappear because of tax structure, energy prices, whatever. And then we move into the E&P MLP phase, call it 2007 to 2014, all blow up by 2016.
That's a great Collier line, by the way. He goes, when we put the capital structure in place, we had $4 billion of EBITDA. Our run rate EBITDA, as I sit here right now, is $200 million. Tell me any capital structure that could have handled that. You know?
I have I'd like to think I come across as reasonably nice, but I'm extremely competitive. And so when it came out that they were buying out of the money puts, so they do $1 billion deal, raise an extra $100 million to buy prices above the current market. I'm like, these freaking guys were on steroids. I didn't realize that because I'm competing with them for deals.
Right.
I'm like, I didn't realize they were buying up the commodity price. Do you remember following that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The other great Collier line was because he was the first to go out and borrow to pay the distribution.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And he took a lot of shit for that. In fact, the guy that ran the MLP stuff at Kane Anderson, Kevin McCarthy, was just on fire.
We're about to get into McCarthy now that you brought him up. I was holding back.
I'll probably have to put the sign up. My non-disparage agreements. But anyway, but it was funny because, I can't believe they're borrowing money to do this. Collier sitting in my office. Collier goes, fucking Exxon did it last month. It's like, it wasn't me. It wasn't just me.
I totally agree with that. But yeah, exactly. Exxon can do whatever Exxon wants. Strange company. But so the quick McCarthy story, back to Cabo. Everything seems to happen in Cabo at the city conference. So, and I actually have to go back to 2008, 2009. It was 2009. We had our first E&P MLP. Market had collapsed. It was a great company, though. It's the one that had all the Marcellus assets, and it was paying a dividend. And we knew we needed to stop with the dividend to make sure we focus on investing in the Marcellus Shale and then go pursue a JV. So we had the parent company, which was a C Corp. So we announced we were merging it back into the C Corp for shares and cutting the dividend effective immediately to zero. McCarthy went crazy. He was one of our largest investors. It was an E&P MLP. And he had to, apparently, he was the only person who had to sell because if we had no dividend, his fund required non-ownership.
Right. That was the line at Kane was basically if it paid a dividend, Kevin got to look at it. If it didn't pay a dividend, we did.
Yeah. So the stock went up literally on our, the week of announcement, like 35% because the market loved that we were cutting the dividend going back to a C Corp.
Right.
And it was the beginning of the massive run. It was really kind of the bottom of the market in March, April. I guess it was March 9th of 09. This was April of 09, just ripped from there. It was like 5 years later. We're in Cabo. My wife is there. And we're at this like cocktail thing. And I say, hey, Kevin, nice to see you. He's like, I said, this is my wife, Jillian. He's like, oh, hi, Jillian. You know, your husband's a fucking asshole.
Really?
I swear to God. And he's like a kind of diminutive guy. He's not like that type, at least from my perspective. He's like, oh, no, I'm just joking. Daniel's great. I'm like, huh, okay. I'm like, Kevin, that was 5 years ago. And it was the right thing to do. We couldn't, you got to do what's right for the shareholders. So, I mean, I guess I'll finish up my kind of energy story, getting to where I am today with WhiteHawk.
Yep.
In that, in 2017, I should also say I've done two other things and three other things of importance. I've been an activist investor. I partnered with Jana Partners in 2017, 2018. Where we invested over $500 million in EQT, which our focus was separating the midstream from the E&P. But halfway through our stock buying before it was public, they announced the Rice acquisition. I then spent a few months leading the team's effort, actually mapping the position because Schlotterbeck, their CEO at the time, was claiming $2.5 billion of synergies because the acreage abutted each other. But I know Appalachia. I didn't believe that to be exactly right. So we mapped every acre. We found out it wasn't right. And they probably were doing it because the CEO was going to make $50 million by hitting production targets by doing the deal.
Show me a man's incentives and I'll show you his actions.
So we did that activist campaign, actually led to the separation of the midstream. We were 100% right, which is why Toby's back as CEO because they needed someone to come in. Schlotterbeck left because he had to give up his compensation. And, I think I'm a huge EQT believer, supporter. We love it. And Toby's fantastic. But I think we were absolutely right. And then I did Energen with Corvex, where we accumulated a large position, and that led to the sale to Diamondback for $9 billion. But in the meantime, we took public in 2017 a SPAC with Credit Suisse. We raised $275 million. And that's what got me to what I believe is the first knowledge of the best way to invest in energy. So before I tell you my view of the best way to invest in energy, you've been doing this forever. What's, in your view, the best way to invest in energy?
So if I ever decide to buy another working interest in my life, will you please cut my dick off? And you can use a serrated.
I will not touch your dick.
I will not
touch your dick.
You can use a serrated knife.
I can tell you there's I don't fucking care. Not gonna go ahead.
Yeah.
No chance.
Also do that if I come to you and say, I have met the 25-year-old hoebag that I plan to spend the rest of my life with and we're starting a family. And either of those circumstances.
The second I'd consider.
So my soapbox on this, kind of what I learned, like having some distance and looking, beta is all that matters. And 80% to 90% of the money invested in energy should be beta focused in some way, shape, or form. and you should use energy as, let's call it insurance, a hedging tool, etc. Let me give you one example. You are a home builder in Houston, you should be short energy because you're not going to be building any houses when energy collapses. If you own a taxi cab company in Las Vegas, you need to be long energy because when oil prices go up, your feedstock's going to go up.
Yep.
That's how you should invest. That's 80 to 90. We'll let you, Dan Pickering, and Bill Perkins can go try to generate alpha, and John Farber at Lime Rock can go generate, and Thomas Ackerman at Carnelian and Billy Quinn at Pearl. Y'all can go generate alpha in the energy business. But other than that, it should all just be beta focused. And it's actually criminal. And this is my big soapbox. It is criminal that a retail investor does not have a pure play way to play the commodity. I mean, you go mess around with USO, you got the roll issue.
Yeah, this is what I heard you mention this before, is you were considering doing a some sort of USO-like investment,
I did.
like an ETF.
I drafted an S1.
But this is where
it's a gorgeous S1.
Yeah.
It's just all the investment banks were like, we have a flow-through entity in energy that we're going to sell to my retail arm. They were like, screw you.
Yeah, we should talk about this because
I'll send it to you. I'm very proud of it. I paid for it, so I might as well share it with you.
But I'm unwilling to accept an investment bank saying no. Like, no offense to our investment banker. Like that, I don't really
see, I'm
care.
an idea guy. I'm fundamentally the laziest person I've ever met. So, I like kind of being unemployed doing this.
I'm an execution guy.
Perfect.
I'm an executor.
There we go.
Like,
all right.
I
will send you the S1.
Well,
anyway, that's my soapbox. Is I think you need to focus on the beta and you need to use it to augment your situation.
Well, so this actually dovetails into what I think is the only way to invest in energy. And I don't want you cutting off any of my parts.
Fair enough.
I don't care what they are. I don't want them cut off. But what I'm convinced of, and I was convinced by Marty over at NCAP, which was minerals and royalties are by far the best way to invest in energy. And so we had the SPAC in 2017. Actually, when we went into NCAP's office, they said, well, you should consider minerals. And I gave you my full background. We've been in E&P. We've been in Midstream. When he said minerals, I left the meeting and I thought he was talking about copper and gold. I didn't even know what the hell he was talking about.
Right.
But then after a few discussions, we realized it's royalties in minerals. And then I happened to be having breakfast in early 2018 with David Foley, who runs the energy group at Blackstone. And David said—
By the way, sorry, I'm cutting you off.
No,
but great David Foley story. I'm sitting in my office one day at Kane. I think I have on a Hawaiian shirt, and I'm probably I probably had on my 50 necklaces, my Mr. T starter kit. So anyway, I'm sitting there. I get a phone call from a headhunter. Periodically those would pop up, and they go, well, we've got this great opportunity for you, and I was like, hold on, time out. I go, I'm sitting here in a Hawaiian shirt. I've got my puka shell necklace on. I mean, I go, you don't want me. Trust me. Why don't you just tell me who it is, and I'll tell you why they won't hire me. And one of the coolest things ever, the headhunter goes, no, I know exactly who you are, Chuck Yates, and we actually want to talk to you. And he talked about my hoodie collection. He's like, we know you have this hoodie. And it was actually Dave Foley.
That's amazing.
And we chatted, and we chatted a couple times. I think he's a great guy.
I love Foley.
I liked him a lot. We just were like, dude, this isn't going to work. I'll put on the tie. I'm going to be miserable,
Well, the reason I love Foley is because he is an extremely focused guy and extremely intelligent, and it's about being successful.
Yeah.
And that guy's looking to be successful. To me, that's extremely important. And he takes a view. He's not afraid to take a view. He takes that view and then they go and execute on that view. And so David, I've been working on for 10 years since Bob Phillips. You remember Bob Phillips at Crestwood?
Yeah.
So Bob was with Blackstone and we were talking to him and Foley back in 07, 08 around Atlas Pipeline. So every 6 months I'd have breakfast with Foley. And this time around, he said, hey, Daniel, we have this royalty business, this mineral and royalty business in the Eagleford.
Yeah.
Why don't we merge it into the SPAC and then you build a team and go consolidate? There's all these private equity firms who put together $25 billion of royalties, and you can make this company into a big success. And I said, well, that sounds better than finishing off winding down the remaining assets. They've pretty much
Right.
used everything they need over, at that business. And so that's how we created Falcon Minerals, which today is called CEO Royalties, which is one of the largest royalty companies.
Right.
And so that's when I was exposed for the first time to royalties. We started Falcon, went public in August of 2018, was CEO of that company for 3 years. We did 32 transactions, mostly smaller transactions, but I'm extremely proud of what Ben Dell and the Kimridge team and all of the people at CIDIO have been able to build, because it's a world-class business.
What was Kimridge's company's name?
Desert Peak.
Desert Peak. So this is, now I get to finally do it, because a lot of having a podcast is you sit around and you just say shit so that you get downloads,
It's great.
whether it's true or not, whatever, That's the way it should have been.
Yeah.
So I said this on the other podcast I do is Big Digital Energy with Colin. And
Great name.
I said this.
Great name.
Yeah, exactly. I actually have a BDE shirt. You know what's weird though, is if you Google BDE podcast, you wind up with Big Dyke Energy. So we may need to change the name. We're going to rebrand potentially. But
What if
anyway,
it's just Big Digital E?
there we go. Maybe so. Maybe that'll work. But so anyway, this is what I said on Big Digital Energy. See how true it is. So Desert Peak had filed their S1. The range was 16 to 18, whatever it was. Bank goes out on the road show. Bank brings the book together at 19 or something like this. The relative 19. Kimridge says no and says they will only do it at 20. Standoff, butt heads, deal doesn't get done. And then they circle back to you, do the deal with you. So they, in effect, went public through Falcon Minerals. But I heard that was one of the testiest pricing calls ever. And that's what I talked about on Big Digital Energy. Not really sure if it's true or not. Put you on the spotlight. Am I even close?
So first of all, let me just be clear.
And I don't know Ben very well. I know Mark really well. And I think Mark's one of the greatest guys on the planet.
So first of all, I'll say I sat down with Ben and Noam and Henry literally within a month of creating Falcon in September of 2018 and said we should be together.
Right.
And Oak Tree, who is part of Desert Peak, been working with Kai over at Oak Tree. We should be together. Source Energy, so what 80% of what CIDIO is today is exactly what I would have hoped it would be. That said, I left Falcon in the end of June 2021. They did the deal with Kimridge in January of 22. So we made it through COVID.
Okay.
The stock price had recovered. Now I know exactly what happened.
Okay.
But I'm not going to say.
Okay. Fair enough.
What I will say is Ben Dell is everything you would want to be. And that is someone who's going to do what they believe is the right thing for their investors. And it's why I happen to love Kimridge. I like activist investing, and I like the energy space now. It needed to have management turnover and people who are committed day in and day out for delivering for investors. And I believe energy has that today and does a great job. Ben Dell is, saw that years ago and really applied that to everything he does. I'm sure what he might have said on that call is, we told you we're not doing it below this. And they're like, well, you're not going to, I would imagine they said, well, you're not going to be able to go out for another year. He says, okay, this is the price I told you. Now, you also have to understand the dynamic. It's not just the bankers. It really comes down to the limited investors that are in the public space. And so one large firm that's not Blackstone, but might sound similar to them, probably has tremendous pricing power.
Totally.
And so the bankers were kind of the messengers. It's not like, so Ben I think they've done a great job. I think, and then what they did with Falcon's super interesting. And I would tell you, I've stayed in extremely close contact with kind of Blackstone and Foley and all of those various people. And it's great. I'm still a big shareholder of CDO. So, but just kind of bringing it to WhiteHawk, what became clear. So I felt like we made it through COVID. Our stock price had rebounded. It had been 3 years. It was clear where Falcon needed to go, which is where it is today. And it didn't need me to go do that. So, so I went, but what I saw was there's a tremendous opportunity to own minerals and royalties. To your point, working interest. I like royalties because there's no CapEx and there's minimal operating expense. So to your point about getting capital calls, right? Like I want to be able to invest my money, have a view as to the value that I'm paying, what the existing production is, what the line of sight wells that are in process, and what the undeveloped is and the pace of that development. And then watch that unfold over the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years. And I love that within what we were doing at Falcon, what CDO is today. And that's what we created at WhiteHawk with the twist that there are no large buyers of natural gas royalties. And when I say large, I mean $50 million plus from private equity. We've done $26 billion of energy transactions, which is like hard for people to fathom, probably because most have never heard of me and they're like, who the hell is this guy?
Right.
Right. But we've done 26 billion. The reality is my specialty is buying $50 to $500 million assets from NCAP, NGP, Quantum, you name it. This is what we do. And they have large royalty portfolios they've done very well with. And they bought those private equity firms when there was 1 well on a unit. Now there's 5 wells on a unit with 5 more to be developed. So it's been de-risked. They've done well. And now we bring in investors who are looking for a nice, stable yield and see the long-term value proposition from owning royalties. So WhiteHawk Energy today, we've been buying, we bought a 475,000 acre position in the core of the Marcellus Shale. Actually, a lot of it our old acreage, which is owned by EQT. 40% of EQT's core position we cover on the royalty side. And then we recently, several weeks ago, announced a 375,000 acre position in the core of the Haynesville. So we have our top 7 operators are EQT, Range, CNX, Chesapeake, Southwestern Energy, Aethon, and Comstock. It's world-class. And I mean, gas prices, we bought right a year ago. We hedged the heck out of it at higher prices. Prices have come down. I think we bought well again. And, having no CapEx, we get to deliver.
So I don't want to belabor this because at the end of this, I'm going to say I still don't get it.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories of all time is, the South Park guys love The Cure. I mean, they worship The Cure. And so they wrote this episode where Robert Smith basically destroyed the mechanical Barbara Streisand to save the world.
Yeah.
And they get Robert Smith on the phone somehow, and they're laying out this episode. Hey, we want you to do this. And Robert Smith at the end of it goes, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
And they're like, but you got to do this. This is so great. He goes, I just don't think it's funny. I don't get it. I'll do it.
Yeah.
But I don't get it. So that's me and royalties. I just don't get it.
Get it? Really?
I don't get it. Carl Brunsicki is one of my dearest friends, and we get together and we drink way too much, and he tries. I had talked myself into, I will buy a mineral at PDP PV0. So I'm getting my money back. It may be over time. And then drilling is where I'll actually make some money. And at one point, that couldn't even buy anything.
Yeah, so it depends what you're looking at, and I don't want to create competitors here.
Don't compete.
No. So as far as not getting it, I totally agree. If it's
I had Chris Transier on the podcast, and we talked about it, and he tried to explain it to me.
Well, let me just put it in this context.
Okay,
this you'll get. We did our Marcellus deal a year ago, right before prices doubled. Nobody called me. Nobody mentioned it. We did our Haynesville deal 2-3 weeks ago. All I get is phone calls. This is hypercritical of the energy space, but I find nobody gives a shit if you buy in Appalachia, but people care if you buy in Louisiana or you buy in Texas or maybe Oklahoma.
Okay.
By the way, for those who don't know, 1/3 of U.S. natural gas production comes from Appalachia, 25% from the Marcellus Shale.
Yeah.
So, but nobody gives a shit. It's not cool. It has never been cool to be in Pennsylvania, which is what we like. Because you know what? I've never been cool. My twin brother, I have a twin brother. Guy's the coolest guy in the world. He's awesome.
Identical or fraternal?
We look enough alike where you wouldn't know the difference, but we're fraternal. But my parents didn't really pay much attention. So it's entirely possible that we could have been identical and they didn't know. In any case.
Okay, so let's circle back to this because this actually can kind of bring it all together. So when Range is selling Ohio, and basically the reason they're doing that is that was the founding of the company. The G&A budget had just gone through the roof, right? So Mike Hines and I go up to Canton, Ohio, and we sit down, and Range basically told the management team, if you can buy it, we'll give you first dibs on it. If not, we're going to run an auction. So the management team sits down, and, you know, Mike and I were kind of young and naive. The guy's kind of going through stuff, and he's got a $9 million G&A budget. And we go, hey, we've got companies this size. You can do this for $4 million.
Yeah.
And he's just like, well, I'm not going to fire anybody. And I go, well, we're not going to make you fire, but that changes the number we can bid. And he's like, well, you just need to leave. And I was like, okay, fair enough. And nice guy, really nice guy.
Sure.
And I totally got it and all this. And we wound up going to the Cleveland Browns, Pittsburgh Steelers game. Thursday Night Football's supposedly the second coldest game in the rivalry. Froze my ass off.
That's a nightmare.
We were sitting there talking, and Mike was smart enough to drink wild turkey, so he was warm. I was drinking beer, and I was frozen.
Yeah.
But as we were sitting there, Mike said, you know, that's going to go for a PDP type number, and it did. John Walker bought it for $325 million, which was PDP, PV10. But Mike goes, you know, every log we looked at had 4 different shales on it. If one of those shales works, that will be a home run. And of course, you wind up with the Utica and the Marcellus through there. And at one point, I think John's MLP was worth $4 billion based on those assets.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and just maybe finishing it off. I mean, that's like how we think about, to your point about buying royalties. Like, and I think about it the same way as if we're paying, what I don't want to do is trade dollars. So we pay a certain discount rate for PDP, certain much higher discount rate for line of sight, and then a very high discount rate for undeveloped. And, you know, we come up with the pace of development based on the inventory life of the operator and our hit rate. But
which, by the way, every time you run the model, pace of development dwarfs EUR. You'd rather hit 50% of your EUR and drill faster.
Yeah. But so to this point though, like why I love it, and I'm not talking my book, but why it's, I believe, the best way to own energy is like your MOIC, your multiple uninvested capital, your PV0 can be like, including all the resource, not including deeper shales that may happen, you can be at 6-7 times. Your PDP PV0 where we're buying is what you're paying. So you're essentially like, you can look at it as PDP, because I look at it the same way. Is if I put out $100, am I getting $100 back? Like, what's the risk I don't get $100?
Right.
And so that I know when we're, and that's my whole thing. We're not valuing, the upside should come from pace of development that is faster pace, from higher commodity prices, from exit, and from additional resource. But I want to know, and what we deliver for our investors, and you know, we've got some of the world's greatest shareholders, but our job is to deliver a good, solid dividend month in and month out, and then over 3, 4, 5, 6 years, deliver a substantial outcome. And I think if you buy in the core of the core, finishing up to your point, you have a pretty good chance of doing that. And your point was, what I would say slightly different is you can't pay a low enough price for bad rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, put it another way, where's the best place to find oil and gas? In the shadow of a derrick, right?
Yeah. So that's why we're 850,000 acres between the Marcellus and the Haynesville. You know, gas prices are going to be, you know, probably tough for a little bit, but it doesn't matter to me. We have 0 CapEx. We have 90% margin, and we generate cash flow month in and month out. So that's the business I want to be a part of. And then when prices do go up, there's no inflationary pressures. We get all the benefit of it going up.
Right.
Seems pretty good.
Good for you. Well, this is cool, dude.
This is great. Great catching up.
we should do it more often than once a decade.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. This was fantastic.
Absolutely.